So we're making strudel, or at least the way that I do it at the lodge, and I was going to show you a couple of different ways. With a couple of different pastries. I'm actually only going to use one. I'm going to show you the second one. But I make strudel a lot. Sometimes I have more time to do it than others. Well, let me show you a couple of different pastries. This right here, you've heard of phyllo dough and puff pastry. Well, I do it with both, depending on how much time I have to do it in. Phyllo dough is probably the one that you'd want to do it with if you really have time and want to fool around, because you can see how paper thin this is. The thing with this is generally you have to take every sheet and brush some butter or some breadcrumbs or even some nut crumbs if you want to in between every sheet and come out with, I don't know, 6 to 10 sheets, however fine you think it is. And then you roll it up and you've got this really wonderful, tender, flaky pastry. But it's very tender, and if you dry it out too much, it doesn't work well and everything. So depending on how familiar you are, the best way to start really to make a strudel is to use puff pastry, which is what I have right here. If you take a piece, and I buy it in big sheets, but you can buy either one of these in the store. Now you can take a piece of puff pastry and just cut it, kind of like I did there. We actually did this flat sheet and took a cookie cutter into a heart, and this is what puff pastry will do if it's let sit in the oven. So we did desserts with this during Valentine's Day with a heart. So you can have fun with puff pastry this way too. And it flakes right apart, and you can pull it right apart. I should be able to pull it. Probably should have a knife, but I mean you could pull it right apart, and basically that's how you get a Napoleon too. So just a hint, if you want to make a Napoleon, cut strips of puff pastry like this, just throw them in the oven, and they'll come out this high, and all you do is cut them in half or thirds and then layer them with pudding and fruit and whatever else with puff pastry. So that's another dessert you can do with a puff pastry that's really easy to do, because you can do these ahead of time and then last minute just put any of your pudding, whipped cream, anything, fruit, strawberries in between and stack them as high as you want. So that's a really nice thing. So this is just a sheet of puff pastry then. So this is the real easy way to do a strudel. And you can do it if you don't want to play around with it. Now this is just about the right, can you kind of pull on that and just kind of see how just play with it. It's pretty forgiving. That's why I like using this, because it's really forgiving. You can kind of pull and push it and everything and make a hole in it and still end up kind of putting it back together, and it's going to be okay.
Was that the strudel?
Last night it was puff pastry. Okay, yep. So this one I might pull out a little bit. Since it's on this particular cookie sheet, I might stretch it or pull it out a little bit. If you want to make it finer, sometimes I only use a third of a sheet and really stretch it if you worked it a little bit and it's really nice and dried out and it's in the stretchable mode. You can use a much smaller sheet and have it a little bit finer and a little bit more tender than having it a little bit thicker like this. But since we're doing this, I just wanted to show you a really easy, foolproof way to come out with it. So if we just kind of push it out to the sides there, that'll make a nice one. Now I've already cut up.
On paper?
No, actually I'll take it off the paper, because when you go to cut the strudel, thank you for saying that, because that's a good point. It's nice, this paper is nice to work with to make things. If I was just doing this, I put the paper under it, but since we might have some juicy apples or blueberries or something coming through, it makes a mess and it sticks to the juices, and you don't want that. So before I fill it, I'll just flip this over, hopefully, and it'll stay in one piece. And I've already greased that sheet.
But that is just commercial?
Yeah, you can make your own too.
But that is...
Yep, you can buy that in rolls. A lot of times it'll come in smaller squares, and that will make apple turnovers. Or you can cut this into smaller squares, and you can even make apple turnovers.
What's the difference between a strudel and a turnover?
Well, probably technically they'd say strudel was made with a phyllo dough. The real strudel is made with even a homemade phyllo dough, which is really, really fine. A turnover you can make with more of a pie crust pastry. You can use the puff pastry, but even more like a pie crust. And it's usually, in a square, and you turn it over and it ends up being, a triangle turnover. So yeah, all different. Yeah, different. Same thing. All differences in pastry, the filling, however you want to do it.
Thank you.
That's some black in there. So I've already cut up some apples, and my favorite is actually to do like an apple with a sprinkle of fruit in it. So these are some organic apples.
And what type of apple?
These are a Fuji apple.
Okay.
We get some beautiful foods from it's called Whole Share. We run an online buyers club out of Ithaca area and other places closer to us. We can get organic produce even in the winter and different things all shipped right here, and then we actually share cases of it. So I was able to get these apples just on Friday, what's today? Just a couple days ago. So these are organic Fuji apples. Granny Smith I would go with if I had a choice. I don't have any Granny Smiths right now. They stay firmer, crisper all winter long too. These just happen to be some that I have and they're organic, so they're nice to use. But the Granny Smiths I love. They're the tart, a little bit of tartness, not so much. So in fact, I'm not even going to use sugar with these tonight unless you guys really want some sugar in there. Because they're sweet enough already. The Granny Smiths I might use a little sugar or brown sugar, but with these I'm not even going to keep the, so you can do a really low sugar, fruit and dessert. So here's our bowl. I'm going to put a little, here you go. That's just cinnamon. Just kind of sprinkle it like you're sprinkling over the top. It depends how much cinnamon you'd like. You can just sprinkle. There's a little bit of sugar in there too, actually.
There you go.
That's all right. You can sprinkle while I fight with this with my gloves on.
That's cool.
Don't be bad.
There you go. However much you'd like. Because there's sugar in there too. That's probably good. So yeah, just kind of over the top. And I happen to have some whole nutmegs here, which make it really nice. And I love nutmeg. So I'm just going to put, generally when you use cinnamon and nutmeg together, it's a little bit more cinnamon than nutmeg, unless you really love the nutmeg, but nutmeg can be very strong. Let me use this little tiny one here. Make sure I don't get plastic in there. There, so there's some nice fresh nutmeg in that one. Okay. Now you had asked last night about, we had marzipan in the strudel last night too. So I was going to do it to this one too. You can totally leave it out. It's almonds. Marzipan is almond.
It really worked well last night.
Yeah, and it works really well. That was with the blueberry, which actually worked better than I thought it was going to. But I really like it with the apple and the blueberries too. My favorite is our apples sprinkled with those wild blueberries that we were talking about. I also have cranberries, so I was kind of do half and half just to show you can do whatever you want. So now this is a little bit of marzipan that we have. It's just kind of like Play-Doh. So I'm going to give you this to shred right into this. Why don't we come over here since we have this space? You're going to use this one right here, whichever right-handed, left-handed you are.
Yeah.
Are you right-handed or
Right-handed.
left-handed? Okay, so I'd kind of hold that. And I'm just going to give you a ball, which is like Play-Doh.
Okay.
And you're just can shred it right into that. It really is like Play-Doh. Marzipan is usually the stuff you see. They make little animals and fruits for things, or they roll it and put it over cakes and everything.
See, it's just like dough.
Yeah, it really is. So while he's shredding that, and we only want a little bit because we're just going to put it on the top of our apples.
Is it like an essence, the marzipan? Like a
When you
like a lemon zest?
probably just a little bit more. We're just going to kind of sprinkle on here. No, it's actually made of ground almonds. You can buy that in the store as well. It usually comes in a small can. You can make it if you really want to get some beautiful almonds. Make your own.
Don't they have like a marzipan oil?
Well, almonds oil. I don't know if I've never seen a marzipan oil.
Literally ground almonds.
Yeah, it's literally ground almonds and really just kind of mushed up. And it's usually little painted, fruits and animals and things that you see little tiny things made out of.
Oh, so you put that just in
Yep.
okay, you don't spread it across.
Nope, I put it right in the center. And this right here actually is a little bit of, because the apples are going to be juicy. Some people use breadcrumbs. I don't want to do the bread thing, and I love oatmeal. So I do a little bit of oatmeal. And you can mix that in the bowl with your apples too, probably
And it's
better
better
off.
for you.
And it's better for you. And I love the taste of oatmeal, so you don't want too much. You just want it there to soak up the extra juice. So I use the oatmeal. That's good. And then, so we just have these shreds, and I just do it in the shredder because it is very moist, so we don't have too much of a big ball of it, because it'll ball back up anyway. So you can put it on the bottom, you can put it on the top, mix it in, whatever you want. It's very, forgiving, however you want it. It's going to all be together. And you can just put a tiny taste in there, or if you really like marzipan, you could put a whole lot in there. And then I'll let you do the fruits. We'll do half blueberry and half cranberry. So however many cranberries you want to just kind of pop on one end. So now the only thing I'm going to do is, actually I didn't bring butter out, but what I'll, can we stop and then start again? You could leave it out if you didn't want to put the butter in, but it's not going to be as good.
No.
Gotta have color.
It's not going to be as good.
No skimping.
Okay. So then I'm just going to roll it up. You're just going to bring in one side
Wrap it up. Let you do.
and then the other. And with the way when you do it with puff pastry this way, I mean, really, you could take some of this excess off and take some cookie cutters if you really wanted to fancy it up. You could take some cookie cutters and take some of this excess, and as you roll it up, stick it on top. The other way to kind of have fun with it, if you really wanted to get a little fancier, would be to
Grate it.
to make strips on either side.
Oh,
And then we'll do that with the blueberry side, and then we'll know which is which. Not that we can't see it, but. So this side we're just going to kind of wrap up and put all up together. And this side you could get a little fancy by bringing kind of one over the other. Or just, it looks like it's a kind of a braided effect. You could get a little fancy if you wanted to.
This is your first one, huh?
What?
It's like surgery.
He's a fast learner.
The first demo here. So you can do a lot of different things to dress it up. Or you can put, like I said, pieces of puff pastry cut out with little cookie cutters and dot them on there, and they'll puff up and make all sorts of different creations for you. But really, it's nice. It's pretty forgiving, the puff pastry. That's why I like it when you can fool around and just want it to come out. I like to put it kind of nice and high instead of, some people make a strudel kind of flat and thin. I like to make it nice and high and top thing. And really, that's all there is. So this should come out pretty nicely. And since it already automatically has some slits there for air, and I'm just going to put some slits on top there, only to take the steam out so it doesn't.
Now, when you do the egg, you mix the egg, white and yolk both?
I do.
And then
Yep.
just brush it on?
And then just brush it on, or actually just take my hand and just kind of put it on. So it'll give it a nice.
But it's both the white and yolk.
Yes. Yep. You definitely scramble it up there.
Okay, it's 400 for
About 20 minutes. I'll go time it. But it's about 20 minutes. I just keep peeking at it. And then when it's nice on the top, and it won't be, I mean, you saw it last night. I mean, you'll see how it comes out because you'll be eating it. So, yeah. Okay? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.